Welcome back, folks. Turns out in order to post a video, you have to film one, and I didn't know that, so this is late, but that's okay because I have all of 13 subscribers, and so, I don't know that it matters too much. I'm back again today, and if you couldn't tell by the title, we're going to be doing some learning today. Today we're going to be learning about something I started thinking about when I was rewatching Avatar. I only watched like 1 or 2 episodes. I need to watch the rest. I was wondering why did all the TV aspect ratios change? When did that happen? Why did that happen? So that's what we're going to learn about today. My cat's manning the camera. Start with the aspect ratio. Basically, this is just the ratio of your TV. So most things used to be 4:3, so the square TVs, and now they're more wide. So 4:3 aspect ratio means the width is 1.33 times the height. So it can also be called a 1.33:1 aspect ratio. Super interesting, I know. So silent film started out with a 4:3 aspect ratio because that's what the film was. It's this little strip, it's got these boxes, and that's what it was. And so that's what every film basically was in. There was some experimentation with different sizes, but for the most part, it was pretty standard. One big change that did happen was the addition of sound to films. So basically, the film strip, right, has all the little pictures on it, and then on the side, there's a strip for the sound. So that would take up just a slight bit more of the strip, so the aspect ratio changed slightly. So it caused it to change from 1.33:1 to 1.2:1, which doesn't sound like a big difference, but apparently was enough for people to complain that it was disorienting and theaters to be upset because they couldn't move their projectors, so everything was just not right. So after all this complaining, the Society of Motion Picture Engineers decided to standardize the 1.33:1 aspect ratio. The standard for films was now this 4:3 ratio. Interesting. So the 4:3 aspect ratio was standard from 1929 to 1932. Not very long. In 1932, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, and also the engineers from earlier, decided to re-standardize it to 1.37:1. This 1.37:1 ratio, also known as the Academy ratio, stayed standard until 1952. So while all this was happening with film, TVs were beginning to rise in popularity. So TVs had become available in the 1920s-ish, but nobody had them. But their popularity began to skyrocket after World War II, and by 1954, half of all US households had a TV. So, popular? I think so. So all of these TVs had a 4:3 aspect ratio, which is about, the size of the movies. So it was pretty similar, comparable, whatever you want to call it. So that being said, movie studios saw that people were just happy watching a movie at home. So they decided to change their aspect ratio, get people back in the theaters. So this takes us to the era of widescreen movies. So the first widescreen movie to really usher in the era of widescreen movies was called This Is Cinerama. This movie premiered at the Broadway Theater in New York in 1952. So this was more of a tech demo than a traditional movie. So some people don't consider it to be the first widescreen movie. Some people consider it to be The Robe, which premiered in 1953 and was more of an actual movie with a plot and stuff. So now movies are wide and TVs aren't. People gotta go to the theaters. They gotta spend their money on popcorn, on drinks, on movie tickets. And because the TVs were so small at the time and just not as high quality as we see today, they couldn't scale it down because then the quality was just so bad. You couldn't watch a movie on the TV. So how did people watch these movies that were now widescreen on their 4:3 aspect ratio TVs? I'm glad you asked. So one method used was the pan and scan method. So they basically just choose a part of the scene to box down into the 4:3 ratio. So a lot of the scene would be cut out, up to 50% sometimes. So, obviously directors, movie people, all those people probably weren't very happy that half their movie was being cut out because the TVs weren't big enough. They weren't as, pixel heavy as today's TVs. They couldn't just put black bars on the top and bottom and show the movie because it just wouldn't look right. So people basically had to settle for these pan and scan movies until the 1980s. So in the 80s, there were larger TV screens, a little bit higher quality, and we saw the first use of letterboxing. So you might be thinking, what is that? So we've all seen it. It's when there's black bars above and below the movie. So that way, instead of having, you know, a zoomed in part of a movie, you'd have the whole thing and there'd just be little bars on the top and bottom. This way the movie was presented in its original aspect ratio. So people were happy, you'd think, but they weren't. There's also pillar boxing or window boxing, which is what you see like if you watch older movies on like your normal widescreen TV, where there's boxes on the sides that come in. So back to letterboxing. This saw a pushback from some viewers because people still felt that the resolution of the TVs and like the size of the TVs wasn't big enough to accommodate for the letterboxing. So they were complaining, they were not happy. So in the 1990s, some VHS tapes were released with both the widescreen and the pan and scan versions of the movies. So now it's the mid-1990s, HD TVs are being introduced. They're not, you know, necessarily the standard, but they're being introduced. 16:9 aspect ratio, which is what we see now on everything, was also being introduced and became more of like a standard. So this HD format and the larger aspect ratio began to rise in popularity until it became the standard in like, you know, 2000s, 2010s, when you start seeing those big boxy TVs disappear from people's living rooms. Now you might be wondering why all these changes in aspect ratios. Basically it was just because movie theaters wanted a way to get people back to the movies, and then people got annoyed. We had the technology, might as well make the TVs a little bigger, and since the screens were a higher resolution, why not make them the same, you know, ratio as the movies? Hope you learned something, because I did research on it, I guess. Like, not a lot, but a little bit. I think these kind of videos are kind of fun to make because I get to like learn a little something I just like wonder about randomly, write it down in my notes, and then Google it later. I get to share that information with all 13 of you. Hope you had fun. Hope you liked this video. If you did, you can just like, or you could subscribe. Stupid. And now I have a C- ranking on Social Blade, so we're really on the up and up, my dudes. Let's get it. I have other videos if you're interested. I don't know. If you know me in real life and I didn't send you this, that's uncomfortable. Stop watching. Thank you. Bye.